This is a black day for freedom of speech. The Provincial Administrative Court in Warsaw, overturning the decision of the National Broadcasting Council, has revoked TV Republika's broadcast license. In this case, in the court's opinion, the authority, that is the chairman of the National Broadcasting Council, violated the rules of administrative procedure to an extent that could have affected the outcome of the case. The verdict is not final, and our TV station has already announced an appeal. In a special statement, the National Broadcasting Council outlined what it thinks of the court's verdict in a brief but forceful way. After the delivery of the recent verdict, the National Council will file a cassation appeal against the verdict with the Supreme Administrative Court. Until the legal conclusion of the proceedings, the licenses of TV Republika and Poland 24 are still in force. Judge Barbara Kolodziejczak-Osetek is not an accidental person. In 2021, she signed on to an appeal by the politicized Judges Association Justia to stop the disciplinary chamber of the judiciary. The decision of the National Broadcasting Council was challenged by MWE Networks Group, the broadcaster of the Polska 24 station, which lost the battle for the license. Media reports say the group has no money to pay for a place on the multiplex. The group's vice president, Karol Wada, puts on a brave face and argues that the funds are there. Financial assurances were also important. At that moment you had, and now how does it look? Well, we have all the time. Our group is also a fast-growing one. That money is there. That money was there. However, the attitude of MWE Networks Group raises many questions. It's a message that our TV station received last September from the company's owner, Michał Winnicki. He offered to buy the company from us, which would stop their claims in court. Good morning. You buy the company, then you can do what you want with the claims to the court after replacing its management. The expected amount for this company is 2.5 million zloty. Claims against the state treasurer are valued at a much higher amount, but it's a court battle for several years. This man made us an offer that he would withdraw the complaint from the court if we bought his company. He submitted this normally to the prosecutor's office, only that in this prosecutor's office he doesn't even have anything to look for. That's how he wanted to sell. He demanded money from us, and then there will be no trial. The day before the court decision, TVN24 aired a replay of a report defaming our station. What a coincidence. I had the impression as I listened to the lady judge that what she was saying had nothing to do with either the law, the documents, or the fact, but very much with the TVN report, which is why so much nonsense. For example, she gave information that the instalment is 6 million. The instalment is 1 million zloty, and we paid it long ago. Only Madam Judge did not check anything. It has been known for a long time that our TV station is a massive thorn in the side of Donald Tusk's ideal media world. First, we weren't allowed into press conferences and crisis staff.
Ale ja bardzo przepraszam. Jestem redaktorem, jestem dziennikarzem. Panowie, uspokójcie się. Jesteśmy na żywo, to jest transmitowane w tej chwili na całą Polskę i cała Polska widzi, że pan mnie dotyka.
And now they want to deprive us of being in every home. This is a liquidation of democracy in Poland right now. Well, this is the truth. This is the liquidation of democracy in an obvious way, even without any pretense. The court's decision was met with fierce protest from the Association of Polish Journalists. We unequivocally perceive this decision as an attack on freedom of speech in Poland, an attack on media pluralism in Poland, and a de facto attack on democracy, because without free media, without pluralistic media, that is, media presenting different points of view on a given issue, democracy does not exist. The issue has also made headlines abroad. Among others, Matej Szlap, who heads CPAC, an organization that brings together conservatives around the world, has come to TV Republika's defense. In Poland, they are trying to silence the largest TV network because they put people like me on the air. This is leftist fascism. Right-wing Romanian presidential candidate George Simeon also stands in solidarity with us, a country that has especially recently experienced what liberal democracy means in practice. Donald Tusk's tyrannical regime wants to shut down the only conservative TV stations completely independent of the government, Republika TV and Pulse 24. Tusk only wants to be praised and turns Poland into a new Belarus. Freedom of speech is dead. The spectre of having our license revoked had been following Republika for months. We were threatened by Deputy Prime Minister Krzysztof Gawkowski. The consequences should be strong, and certainly in the case of TV Republika, because such behaviour directly indicates that we should be talking about revoking the licence. Threatened by Donald Tusk's court avenger, i.e. Roman Giertych. After the National Broadcasting Council exchange, I will request the revocation of the licence for this lying station. Enough of openly spreading criminal lies. Now these threats are becoming a reality, and the idea is to do the same thing that happened to the public media, that is, the collapse.
20 grudnia 2023 roku
On December the 20th, 2023, Donald Tusk, Rafał Trzaskowski and their team took away from millions of Poles their TV. Now they want to do it again with TV Republika. And it is solely up to you whether they succeed. If there is strong opposition, together we will win this battle. Because for years, Civic Platform has been about one thing. This is what these elections are about, so that we are not asked these kinds of questions all the time. Therefore, now your support is especially important to us. We sincerely thank you for every form of assistance. Special thanks are due to the club members of Gazeta Polska, who gathered in crowds to protest in front of our station headquarters.
Republika! Republika!
We, for our part, can promise that we will fight to the very end.
Będziemy się bronić.
We will defend ourselves with all possible legal and political means. We will appeal to international opinion to prevent TV Republika's signal from being turned off. We have emergency options prepared, but in order to activate them, we also need your support. Republika Television is an exceptional group of journalists, cameramen, technicians, and all the people who work every day for you, our viewers. But TV Republika is first and foremost its viewers, who have shown time and again that they are always on the side of Poland and on the side of freedom. You cannot be denied access to your television.
Dziękujemy! Dziękujemy!
Prezydent Andrzej Duda poinformował,
Polish President Andrzej Duda reported that Poland ranks second in the world in terms of its ability to combat cyber threats, and our soldiers and officers who serve in the cyber defense forces are a special type in the Polish army.
Mamy nowy rodzaj wojsk w Polsce od niedawna.
We have a new type of army in Poland as of late, the cyber defense troops. They are functioning excellently. They are developing, and this is a very important aspect of security today. Actually, in every aspect, starting with military security and ending with this everyday security, our civilian security, even our domestic security.
To nie była dla nas tajemnica, że Amerykanie mają zamiar dokonać.
It was no secret to us that the Americans intended to relocate their forces. However, both President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and General Kellogg, in conversations I had with them, clearly stated that there are no plans to reduce the presence of American armed forces in Poland. We have a number of locations where Americans are present in Poland in various forms and types of American military, and the relocation of these soldiers will occur where it is appropriate. According to NBC, there is a possibility of withdrawing even 10,000 soldiers from our part of Europe. Are these signals that might cause concern? This is not specific information in Poland, but it is our country.
Ale ja słucham tego medialnego bla 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 bla.
Please forgive me, but I have been listening to this media blah 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 for a very long time, and frankly, I filter it. Definitely filter it. Please remain calm, wait for concrete decisions, and do not listen to rumors, whispers, or media disinformation, because various actors are involved, including those who simply want to spread disinformation and unrest.
dlatego poradzą sobie również.
Therefore, they will also cope during the election campaign and the particular intensity of these attacks on our infrastructure. At the moment, without the election campaign, they are repelling nearly 1,000 such attacks every week. The Polish president also commented on the press panic that erupted over the news of the relocation of American troops from Jasionka. The president said this maneuver was agreed upon with allies and called the panic in the media exaggerated.
Sojusznikami, a panikę w mediach nazwał przesadzoną.
There may be evidence of Beijing's involvement in the Russian aggression against Ukraine. 2 Chinese soldiers fighting in the ranks of Putin's army, now in the hands of Ukrainian services. We captured Chinese soldiers on Ukrainian territory in the Donetsk area. There were 6 of them. 2 were captured successfully. We have their passports, credit cards, and they are Chinese citizens. Kiev has already demanded an explanation from Beijing.
Pytanie, czy mają oni przeszłość?
The question is whether they have a past in the Chinese army, were or are Chinese soldiers. This is very important in this case because China is, behind the scenes, supporting Russia in its invasion against Ukraine. This is not as evident as in the case of North Korea, whose soldiers were also at Kursk, but there were about 11,000 of those soldiers, and here we are talking about 2 for now.
Tutaj na razie mówimy o 2.
Postrzał!
But Ukrainian services and Ukrainian journalists believe there could be as many as several hundred. Chinese authorities officially deny it. The Chinese government advises our citizens to stay away from conflict zones to avoid being suspected of participating in them, and it is especially forbidden to take part on either side in a military operation. The US State Department, concerned about China's activity in Eastern Europe, is accelerating negotiations. US and Russian representatives are to meet in Istanbul tomorrow.
US and Russian delegations will meet for a second time in Istanbul to try to make progress on further stabilizing the operations of our bilateral missions. So that is happening in Istanbul. There are no political or security issues on the agenda, and Ukraine is not, absolutely not on the agenda.
For now, there can be no talk of peace. Russian barbarians last night dropped bombs on settlements in Kharkiv, Dnipro and Kramatorsk. Of course, wherever defenseless people live. In Kryvyi Rih, neighbors and relatives said goodbye today to 24 people who died in Friday's attack by Putin's army on a playground.
We urge the Russian Federation to bear in mind that strikes like those on Kryvyi Rih and executions of prisoners of war have the potential to damage peace efforts and all dependent discussions. The April 4th missile strike further underscores the need for an end to this devastating war. And we will ultimately judge President Putin's commitment to a ceasefire by Russia's actions.
Kiev is not going to stand by passively as criminal Russia murders civilians. The Ukrainian army has entered enemy land, the border region of Belgorod, and is going on the offensive there, targeting Russian soldiers and military equipment. Both sides are engaged in intensive warfare the whole time, aimed at inflicting the greatest possible losses on the other side. And certainly this kind of active frontline picture does not indicate that we are facing some kind of diplomatic breakthrough, a peace breakthrough. The new US administration is seeking a truce in Eastern Europe, but is also demanding that European allies take care of their own armies.
President Trump clearly stated that he wants to continue with that policy and maybe even speed it up to pivot more towards Asia. That's totally logical. And also that they want the European and Canadian NATO allies to take more of a burden, share the burden in a more equal, in a fairer way.
In addition to increasing our own military capabilities, a strong alliance with America is crucial because only the presence of US Army troops on NATO's eastern flank guarantees our security.
World markets are once again scoring declines this week. Although they are not as large as on Monday, it is still very nervous on the trading floors, all because of the introduction last night, announced by the U.S., of more tariffs on countries from which sales to the U.S. significantly exceed imports. This is the largest 84% tariff imposed on China, which makes, together with the previous rates, products imported from China subject to a 104% tariff from now on. If the U.S. really wants to solve problems through dialogue and negotiation, it should adopt an attitude of equality, respect, and mutual benefit. If the U.S. disregards the interests of both countries and the international community and insists on engaging in a tariff war and trade war, China will certainly fight to the end. Basically out of the blue, in response to U.S. strictures, China has increased tariffs on U.S. imports to 84%. However, it seems that most countries are trying to negotiate with the Americans. According to the White House, talks are already underway with more than 70 countries.
This is the largest transaction in the history of our country. And don't let some of these politicians go around saying, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir.
Trump argues that this is about market justice. In the background, however, there is growing speculation that it is about a deliberate collapse of the markets to drive down interest rates on U.S. debt and the so-called bond rollover. On the other hand, as experts point out, in the long run, further escalation will not be endured by the largest economies. A side effect of the tariff war is the huge drop in oil prices. While at the beginning of the week there was talk of a significant change, now there is even talk talk of a sell-off. Saudi Arabia and OPEC countries are still maintaining plans to increase production, pushing today's price per barrel below $60, the lowest since the middle of the pandemic, when global trade was essentially suspended. Russia bases its economy on raw material exports. Oil and gas are the main axis of revenue, earmarked for armaments. Faced with Western sanctions, the Kremlin has already had to cut prices. Now they are approaching the level of unprofitability of extraction and transportation, and thus a catastrophe for an economy that has been switched to wartime for the past 3 years.